forget this slide. So you are all welcome to the CBSE in-house training session, and the topic is essential components of lesson plan. You all have might heard or well aware about the lesson plan, because every one of you, whenever enters in any class, you pre-decide yourself what is you are going to teach in a class, and that things are mentioned in the lesson plan. So in this session, we will be addressing different essential components of lesson plan and what is its advantage on both sides, teacher also and as well as student also. So let's start the session. First of all, let we have a brief concepts on the lesson plan. A lesson plan is the instructor's roadmap of what students need to learn and how it will be done effectively during the class time. Means if we tell about roadmap, we know whenever we are traveling, we know our destination, we know our departure. Similarly, when we arrive in any class, we know how we have to start the class and finally how we can conclude our concept. So basically, lesson plan is the instructors, is the teacher's roadmap of what students need to learn and how it will be done effectively during the class time. Then you can design appropriate learning activities. That means different tools. You can use different types of tools, different types of methods, and develop strategies to obtain the feedback on student learning. Right? Having a careful constructed lesson plan allows us to enter the classroom with more confidence and maximizes our chance of having a meaningful learning experience with our students. So whenever we are in a class, there is two persons inside a class. One is the teacher and other is a group of students. So if we are delivering any lecture, it doesn't mean that we are gaining the experience. The student also who are understanding you, who are learning from you, and who are getting all types of concepts from you. So it is beneficial for both person, teacher also as well as for student also. A successful lesson plan addresses and integrates three key components. What are they? They are learning objectives, learning activities, and assessment to check for student understanding. So these three are the three pillars of our lesson plan. We must have the objectives, what we are going to teach to the students and how we are going to teach. This comes under the learning objectives and learning activities. And when we conclude our lecture in the class, then the final is the assessment. Whatever we have taught in the class, we must have to assess how much our learnings is gained by the students. And when we do that assessment, we feel that whatever time you have given the class, that becomes successful. Or if there is some type of corrections, some types of, you can say, changings that can be done to implement the class activities more clearly and more solidly, we can do that things, right? Essential component of lesson plan. The first, a lesson plan provides you a general outline of our teaching goals, learning objectives, and means to accomplish them, and is by no means exhaustive. Yes, whatever we have the lesson plan, that means that should not be exhaustive for the students. That should not be boring for the students. And it is generally cover the all the teaching goals. Whatever we come in the class, whatever we have the aim in our mind, what we have the objectives regarding the materials that should come in the lesson plan, and it should not be exhaustive, it should not be tidy. A productive lesson plan is not one in which everything goes exactly as planned, but one in which both students and instructor learn from each other. I mentioned it earlier. Whatever you planned, it doesn't mean that when you taught the students, it goes as per your plan. There can be a situation where we have to change slightly your plan because students are of different types. Some are fast learner, some are slow one. So based on the raw materials of your class, your planning should be modified at the same time. So basically it means what? Lesson plan must be flexible. It should not be compact, it should not be rigid, right? See, here a picture is given before the class, during the class, and after the class. When you are not arriving in the class, so what you have to do before that? Identify the learning objectives. That means the concept, the material that you are going to teach in the class, you should first of all identify it. Second, plan the specific learnings, activities, assessments, and sequence of the lesson. Whatever tools, method you are going to use, that must be planned properly. Assessments, finally, how you will assess your students, that must be clear in your mind. Create a realistic timeline. The timeline, what amount of time you have got in your class, 40 minutes, 30 minutes. So within that time period, you have done all these three things, right? Plan for a lesson closure. Yes, you must have how to conclude your all the concepts. That must be in your mind. It should not be like that when you start and there's no any time for stopping. Then what happens? Whatever you taught in the class, you will not get feedback from the students. What you taught, you must get feedback. Then only you can feel that whatever you have delivered in the class, that is fruitful for the students. Now, during the class, what you are going to do? Share the lesson plan with your students, helps keep them more engaged and on track. When you share the lesson plan, what happens? Students are very clear in their mind what are the different activities in the classes which are done by our teachers. What are the tools he or she will use for us to make the effective learnings. So it will be better if you share the lesson plan with your students. After the class, reflect on what worked well and why, and what you could have done differently. This thing is very important. Whenever you done with your class, you just think in yourself what I have done well and what I have done not well, what I should have to done so that my class should become more effective. When you recycle your mind and when you rethink yourself, and what happens when next time when you will have the class, you can improve your classes more easily and more effectively, right? Steps for preparing lesson plan before joining the class, right? So first step is your identify the learning objectives. It is already clear. Learning objectives should be clearly identified. Before we plan our lesson, we first need to identify the learning objectives for the lesson. Our learning objectives describes what the learner will know or be able to do after the learning experience rather than what the learner will be exposed to during the instruction or topics. Right? So learner must be clear that what they are going to study. What should be their learning experience with the learning objectives that should be kept in their mind, right? Typically, it is written in a language that is easily understood by students and clearly related to the program learning outcomes. It is basically in written form and it must be easily understood by the students. Table given below are the different characteristics of clear learning objectives. Let's see it. We have two column, characteristics and description. Properties of learning activities. It must be clearly stated task. Important learning goals must be in there. It must be achievable, demonstrable and measurable, fair and equitable and linked to the course program objectives. If I ask about clearly tasks free from difficult and complex vocabulary, we should not use difficult words. It must be easy and it must be understandable by the students. Describe specific and achievable tasks, not uncertain tasks. Describe the essential learnings in the course which a student must achieve, can be achieved within the given period, and sufficient resources are available. Whatever activities, tools, method that must be available with you whenever you arrive in the class, because by using that you can make your learnings more effective and more, you can say, easy for the students. Can be demonstrated in a tangible way, are accessible, achievement and quality of achievements can be observed, right? All students, including those with disabilities or constraint, have a fair chance of achieving them. This point must be clear in our mind that we might have addressed with those students which have some disabilities. So if there are some type of students, we must take care of them accordingly. We have to run the classes of all the students. If there is a student of 40 students in a class, every 40 students should be learning from you. If any of one of them is disabled, you should find some another way so that whatever you are teaching in the class, that is clearly understood by that student. Now, second step is to plan the specific learning activities. When planning learning activities, we should consider the types of activities students will need to engage. This should be already in our mind. What type of activities you are going to do in the class in order to develop the skills and knowledge required to demonstrate effective learning in the course. Learning activities should be directly related to the learning objectives, where the activities what we are doing in the class should be directly linked with the objectives of the learning and provide experience that will enable students to engage in practice and gain feedback on specific progress towards those objectives. As you plan your learning activities, estimate how much time you will spend on each. This planning, we must do it earlier. We have different sections of the lesson plan. Every section requires how much time. We should have that planning so that all the components of the lesson plan will be addressed very effectively inside the class. Build in time for extended explanation or discussion, but also be prepared to move on quickly to different applications or problems and to identify the strategies that check for understandings. There might be some moment inside the class where we have to extend our explanation or discussion because a student might have facing some issues in any concept. So we there is an occasion that we have to extend our explanation, but at the same time we must move on quickly to different applications or problems so that finally we can conclude our lesson plan very effectively. Some questions to think about as you design the learning activities you will use are here we have a again one table. It consists of three columns: activity type, learning activity, and description. What are the different activity type we are used inside the class? Interaction with the content. That means whatever the material we have come up in the class, that material should be interacted with the students. How it can be interacted? Students are more likely to retain information presented in these ways. Whatever the learning activities in the next column, that things are here mentioned. In these ways, if they are asked to interact with the material in some way. Drill and practice, lecture, quiz, student presentation. These are the four learning activities we can utilize, we can implement inside the class to interact the content, the material that we have come in the class with the students. So how we implement drill and practice? Problem task is presented to students where they are asked to provide the answer, maybe timed or untimed. You can mention the time, we can ask the problem, ask the task. Lecture, convey concept verbally, often with visual aids. We can offer some visual aids, some video to the students, or we can also verbally ask the students, ask the for the slides, right? Quiz, exercise to assess the level of student understanding, and question can take many forms: multiple choice, short structure essays, etc. So these all are the tools which we can utilize in our class so that we can seek the attention of our students and student feels engaged in the class. It feels they feels entertained in the class and they will always make concentration inside the class because somehow we have to make our class entertaining, and classes can be made entertaining when we use different types of tools, different types of activities. Here, like here it is mentioned, we can ask multiple choice question, we can ask some interesting essays in between the class. We can also show some videos, some slides. So there can be different ways by which we can seek the attention of our student inside the class and make our classes very effectively and very meaningful. Others activities are interaction with digital content, right? We can have the smart class, right? By using a smart class, we can provide digital content to the students. We can provide different videos, different pictures, so that it will basically what it will make the class entertaining, and it creates curiosity inside the student to ask different conceptual questions. Interaction with others means peers. The student can interact with each other. Whatever you taught in the class, you can ask to the students, debate between yourself. So what they will affect, they will basically create lots of solution to the problems. Whatever the problems is inside a student, when they discuss with their friends, what happens? Their problems will be solved out within that discussions only. It is seen that the student and teachers are not more comfortable as they are comfortable among themselves. It may be possible that some students have some problems and they are not asking to us. So when you involve themselves in group discussion, what happens? They will ask their internal curiosity among their peers, among their friends. And in that group, there must be some students which have almost covered all your concepts. So they can make them understand well as compared to you. So these all are the tactics we can use inside a class to make our class more effective. Plan to assess students' understanding. Assessment is very important. Assessment provides opportunity for students to demonstrate and practice the knowledge and skills articulated in the learning objectives, and for instructors to offer targeted feedback that can guide further learnings. Planning for assessment allows us to find out whether our students are learning, right? Whenever we are assessing the student, basically we are seeing how the students are learning. What are the percentage of learnings they have gathered, right? It involves making decision about the number and types of assessment tasks that will best enable students to demonstrate learning objectives for the lesson. The criteria and standards that will be used to make assessment judgments, student roles in the assessment process, self-assessment and peer assessment. So student can assess by self also and by their friends also. The friend can also assess the amount of knowledge gained by their friends. The weighting of individual assessment tasks and the method by which individual task judgment will be combined into final grade for the course. The provision of feedback, giving feedback to students on how to improve their learnings, as well as giving feedback to instructors how to refine their teachings. So feedback should be on the both sides. If we take feedback from the students, then students should also take feedback from us also, so that we can understand what is going wrong inside the class from our side also and from their side also. Plan to sequence the lesson in an engaging and meaningful manner, right? So how we sequence the different sections of lesson plan so that it is more engaging and meaningful. First is gain attention. Obtain students' attention so that they will watch and listen while the instructors present the learning content. How this attention can be achieved? Like by present a story or a problem to be solved, utilize current news, events, case studies, and so on. The objective is so quickly grab students' attention and interest in the topic. These things these are the tricks that we can use inside our class to seek the attention of the student. Utilize technologies such as clickers, surveys to ask leading questions prior to lecture, survey opinion, or gain a response to a controversial question. So these all are the tactics. Inform learner of objectives, what the objectives you have come with inside the class, that should be informed to the learners, to the students. Allow students to organize their thoughts regarding what they are about to see, hear, and do. Include learning objectives in lecture slides, the syllabus, and in instruction for activities, projects, and papers. Describe required performance. Describe criteria for standard performance. Stimulate, that means stimulate recall of prior knowledge. Initiate, we have to initiate the previous concept what we have taught to our student. For example, if we are attending a class, so in previous class what we have taught, that you can stimulate, that you can reactivate, so that whatever things that is teaching today's class, that should be directly linked with the previous class and student feel more comfortable regarding the learnings, right? Present new content, provide guidance, practice. All these should be in a very sequence manner. Utilize a variety of methods, including lecture, readings, activities, projects, multimedia, and others. Provide guidance, advise students of studies to aid them in learning content and of resources available. With learning guidance, the rate of learning increases. because students are less likely to lose time or become frustrated by basing performance on incorrect facts or poorly understood concepts. Provide instructional support as needed, like cues, hints, prompt, which can be removed from the students learns the task or content. Model provide varied learning strategies, mnemonics, concept mapping, role playing, visualizing, use examples and non-examples. These all are the tricks which can be used to provide guidance to the student, basically to maintain their attentions, to create their concentration towards the classes. Practice allow students to apply knowledge and skill learning. Allow students to ask deep learning questions, make reference to what students already know, or have students collaborate with their peers. Ask students to recite, revisit, reiterate information they have learned. Right? What they have learned, they must discuss among themselves, so that the taught part, the learned part, can be in their mind for longer time. Facilitate student elaboration. Ask students to elaborate or explain details and provide more complexity to their responses. Provide feedback. So we must provide feedback to the students. What amount of learnings they have gained. Provide immediate feedback of student performance to assess and facilitate learnings. Consider using group class level feedback, highlighting common errors, give examples or models of target performance, so students that what you do not want. Consider implementing peer feedback. So these all are the tactics. Assess performance. We are also seeing the performance of the student to evaluate the effectiveness of the instructional events, test to see if the expected learning outcomes have been achieved. Performance should be based on previously stated objectives. Utilize a variety of assessment methods, including exams, quizzes, written assessment, projects, and so on. Enhance retention and transfer. Allow students to apply information and personal context. This increases retention by personalizing information. Provide opportunities for students to relate coursework in their personal experiences. Provide additional practices. Now, after the class, during the class, when you enter the class, what you are going to do? Letting your students know what they will learning and doing in class will help them more engaged and on track. Providing a meaningful organization of the class time can help students not only remember better, but also follow your presentation and understand the rationale behind the planned learning activities. You can share your lesson plan by writing a brief agenda on the whiteboard or telling students explicitly what they will be learning and doing in the class. So when you arrive in the class, so you should discuss your plannings to the students so that they are well aware about the different activities and the concept that they are going to learn inside the class. After the class, reflecting on your lesson plan. Take a few minutes after each class to reflect on what worked well and why, and what you could have done differently. Identifying successful and less successful organization of class time and activities would make it easier to adjust to contingencies of the classroom if needed to revise the lesson plan. So after you walk out of the class, you just rethink yourself what went right or what went wrong, and how you can improvise your lesson plan for the next classes so that you can give more effectiveness in your classes. Thank you.